was I in there?
Time elapsed since program initiation, approximately 246 days.
Wait, what? What day is it?
Today's date is July 4th, 2026.
Oh my god, Ars, you know I wanted to get a video done for the 4th of July. Ah, dude, why didn't you wake me up? Okay, well, I'll be in the hangar. If Dr. Nico comes by, let me know, or let him know in the hangar if he wants to talk to me and it's that urgent. He said there was something important he wanted to talk to me about, but I don't know what it is, so you can send him my way or just take a message for me. I'll be back in a bit. Hello all, welcome to another episode of Hangar 412, the show that gives you the rundown on all the lore and technology behind our favorite vehicles in fiction. And in this very special episode commemorating America's 250th Independence Day, we'll be exploring the lore behind the defenders of not just Groom Lake, but the entire globe. The Earth Space Defense's hybrid human harvester exoatmospheric extraorbital aerospacecraft. From the sequel famous for totally and absolutely missing the point of the original movie, Independence Day Resurgence.
One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're all interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power, you almost never get it back.
Starting with the multi-role and aerospace dominance fighter, the H-8 Global Defender. After the War of 1996, debris from downed Harvester spacecraft was researched and reverse engineered. In 1999, the newly formed Earth Space Defense obtained an early FA-22 Raptor model to use as the testbed to further develop technologies derived from recovered Harvester technology. On January 8, 1999, the ESD equipped the newly obtained stealth fighter with recovered Harvester energy shield technology and used it to study how the shields might be reverse engineered and applied to future combat aircraft. Now keep in mind, this was only roughly a year and a half after the F-22's first flight on September 7, 1997. So clearly, the ESD had some connections to work that fast. Though, all other research gathered from this initiative would in fact be used as the base for the further stages of the hybrid fighter program, the shields in particular would be dropped from the H-8 program after early testing showed that the shields were too energy expensive for the H-8's fusion reactor. However, the story of the H-8's development isn't so smooth, as at some point in 2007, one of the very first human-alien hybrid fighters would be lost during flight testing at Area 51. And unfortunately, this accident would take the life of the program's lead test pilot, Marine Corps General Stephen Hiller. And according to later reports, the accident was caused by an unspecified mechanical failure. No sources confirm this, but my theory is this may have had something to do with the shields and why they were dropped from the program. The H-8 Global Defender would enter active service in August of 2014, and she would heavily resemble her predecessor, the FA-22 Raptor. However, side tangent, to me, it looks a lot more like an Su-57 Felon, especially around where the intakes are supposed to be. And if you notice, the intakes are blended into the wing a lot like the Comet or the British V-bombers, which I don't know why we ever stopped doing that, probably for maintenance and stuff like that, but that was so cool. We need to put the engines back inside the wings. I think that's cool. But regardless, if it looks more like an Su-57 to me than an F-22, the Su-57 is based off of the F-22 anyway, so it all loops back to the F-22 regardless, so whatever. And knowing full well I'll sound extra nerdy here, but it also kind of reminds me of the YF-18G Bird of Prey, with the way the wings kind of bend downward right at the end with those winglets right at the wingtips. I don't know, it just kind of gave me Bird of Prey vibes. Now this would actually make a lot of sense, as both the YF-118 and H-8 projects were tested at Groom Lake. The biggest difference being that the YF-118 was developed by Boeing, and with the H-8 seemingly based off of the F-22, that would have had Lockheed connections. However, both Boeing and Lockheed have facilities right next to each other at Palmdale, where the YF-22 and later F-22 would be developed. So that makes sense. And Palmdale is heavily associated with Area 51 and Edwards Air Force Base, where the YF-118 would be tested. So I think it all makes sense. It all has connections one way or the other. However, unlike her predecessors, the YF-118 and YF-22, the H-8 had exoatmospheric flight capabilities. This means the craft would have to use what's called impulse jet reaction control thrusters integrated along the hull at various points, as there's no air in space, obviously, for conventional flight control surfaces to function. More Battlestar Galactica, less Star Wars. Think of it that way. These impulse jets seem to work very much like the jet engines that powered the Reich Aviation Ministry's Fi-103V1 Hellhound cruise missiles developed by Gerhard Fieseler Werk during the German socialist occupation of Europe in 1944. Early jet engines developed 70 years previously. However, what sets them apart from their early predecessors is the pulse jets on the H-8 would have to use their own onboard oxygen systems, as the term jet refers to an air-breathing combustion engine. See, the key difference between a jet engine and a rocket engine is quite simple. A jet engine is made to work within atmosphere, so it doesn't need to bring the oxygen that it uses to burn fuel along with it, because fire, of course, needs oxygen to burn, as we all know. So a jet can just take that from the air around it, add fuel, combust it, shoot it out the back, where a rocket working in space needs to bring that oxygen with it along with its primary fuel source. So in this particular case, the term jet is extremely misleading, as they really just are reaction control thrusters. And the way they're described is really weird, when in reality, reaction control thrusters are basically just bottles of compressed nitrogen. I mean, that's not specifically what they are, but that is a very oversimplified description to give you basically an idea of what is going on here. The Global Defender also utilizes Y-27 Alien Tech Thrust Module Anti-Gravity Generators reverse engineered from debris found at Harvester spacecraft crash sites to give the H-8 unmatched VTOL, that is, vertical takeoff or landing capabilities. So that makes me think the F-35 wouldn't happen in this universe, because the ESD technically made a VTOL capable version of the F-22, which was made by Lockheed, who also made the F-35. So Lockheed would have already had a VTOL capable version of the F-22, rendering the need for the F-35 kind of null and void. So that's interesting to think about. The H-8 is also equipped with a life support system that can provide a cockpit environment comfortable enough not to require a pressure suit, even in space. I bet you the SR-71 and U-2 guys are pretty jealous, huh? It is unknown what the craft uses for radiation and heat shielding for exoatmospheric flight and re-entry, along with general high-speed flight, or if this hypothetical heat shield affects the craft's presumed stealth capabilities. For weaponry, the Global Defender comes equipped with 2 rapid-fire pulse laser systems reverse-engineered from those found on recovered Harvester Attacker spacecraft, the little alien fighters from the first movie that Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum used to upload the virus onto the alien mothership there. As for service history of this era spacecraft, the H-8 Global Defender's most famous deployment was during the War of 2016, where several squadrons of H-8 Global Defenders were tasked with escorting several formations of B-012 Heavy Defender bombers operating under the Earth's space defense as they launched a massive assault on the Harvester mothership. Though this operation would predictably end in failure, as both craft were built using reverse-engineered Harvester technology, so the Harvesters were able to use their superior understanding of their technology to deactivate all the H-8 Global Defender and B-012 Heavy Defender systems, destroying and disabling several aircraft and their nuclear payloads. So that's literally all the lore I could find for this aircraft. I mean, I did everything. I went through the DVD special features, I listened to the commentary, I went to several wikis. That's where I found there's apparently a mobile game that's all about these aircraft. And so I found a Let's Play on YouTube and went through that like frame by frame. And apparently there's also a accompanying novel that gives you a lot of information on like the early development of the H-8. And I did everything short of actually reading that from cover to cover. I just kind of dug through it to get out what I could. But man, there is not a lot of information on this plane at all. And I got every bit I could find. But before I move on to the B-012, I have to say the H-8 Global Defender instantly became one of my all-time favorite fictional fighter designs. I have to put it up there with the X-Wing and ARC-170 from Star Wars, the Viper from Battlestar Galactica, and the ADF XO-102 from Ace Combat Zero, because all of those look extremely realistic to me. Though, yes, stylized clearly, they look like actual fighter jets. In fact, I even saw a video on YouTube showing how realistic the X-Wing from Star Wars technically is, with a few modifications. So the more realistic a spacecraft looks to me, the more I like it, just because it makes it seem more tangible and a bit more immersive in that way, I think. If I can picture it flying over my head in the desert, then I like the design. But moving on to the Earth Space Defense's Hybrid Human Harvester Exoatmospheric Extraorbital Heavy Bomber, the B-012 Heavy Defender. And just like with the H-8 Global Defender that we just covered, not much is known about the B-012 Heavy Defender. What is known about the B-012 Heavy Defender is it is a quad-engine extraorbital heavy bomber operated by the Earth Space Defense. The Heavy Defender is powered by 4 standard turbofan jet engines capable of propelling the craft to speeds of roughly 1,227.63 miles per hour, or 1,975.67 kilometers per hour, or roughly Mach 1.6. And just like her cousin, the H-8 that we previously discussed, the B-012 uses 2 reverse-engineered Y-27 Alien Tech Fusion Drive Thrust Module anti-gravity generators for vertical takeoff and landing capabilities, as well as exoatmospheric flight. And as you can clearly see, the Y-27s are more naturally and seamlessly blended in to the B-012's design, as opposed to her cousin, the H-8, where they're just kind of bolted on the bottom of the wings. As for weaponry, the B-012 can be armed with 8 J-2 cold fusion atomic bombs. And seeing as the craft is clearly based on the B-1B Lancer, it should be able to carry roughly 50,000 pounds, or 25 US tons, or 23,000 kilograms, or 10.43 metric tons of conventional ordnance as well. And on the note of the Lancer, it seems far more than likely that the B-012 is adapted from a B-1 airframe, considering that the H-8 was developed from modifying an early FA-22 Raptor airframe with recovered harvester technology. I could almost guarantee that the B-012 was developed from modifying a B-1B Lancer airframe in exactly the same way. Plus, there's a proposed version of the B-1 that would have looked a lot more like the B-012 than the stock B-1 already does, called, wait for it, the B-1R. Now spell it out. I know the R is supposed to stand for regional, but I am telling you right freaking now, someone in the Pentagon or at Boeing was screwing around. Don't tell me someone didn't instantly catch that. Now, obvious low-hanging jokes aside, the B-1R would have been given a few notable upgrades, one of which would have been its distinctive V-tail configuration, which would have given it more similarity to the B-012 over the B-1's traditional T-tail, And furthermore, most importantly, it would have been given the exact same engines that the F-22 uses. Now, this only forms a more solid connection or evidence in my headcanon, though never clearly stated, that the B-012 is clearly a modified or descendant of the B-1 in the same way that the H-8 is of the F-22, as both craft would have been using the Y-27 Alien Tech anti-gravity generators, along with possibly the same engines, and both the B-1 and F-22 have connections to Palmdale, where it's likely that they were working on the H-8, as that's where the YF-22 and F-22 were developed. So even though, as I said, it was never clearly stated, I have to say there's way too much evidence to ignore to state that, yeah, it's probably a descendant of the B-1. As for its service history, it's basically identical to that of the previously discussed H-8. Its only known deployment was during the War of 2016, where several squadrons of B-012s were being escorted by several squadrons of H-8s, and because they were made of alien technology, the aliens were able to turn them off, thus rendering the attack null and void by destroying and disabling all the aircraft and their weaponry. However, it is unknown how many, if any, B-012 airframes still exist today. For example, we don't know if any B-012s were spared from participating in the operation by being out on active deployments in other theaters, away for flight training or flight testing, away for maintenance, or if any were manufactured afterwards, or any were preserved as museum display pieces. But just as with the H-8, as I keep stating, that's where the lore basically hits a brick wall and everything ends. I used all the same resources I previously mentioned with the H-8. And again, I have to share the same thoughts. I absolutely love the design of the B-012. The designation is kind of odd. I don't know where the 0 comes in. But it, again, is just visually stunning to me. It looks extremely realistic. It looks more realistic to me than the H-8 because the alien engines are less noticeable, so it just looks like your traditional next generation bomber concept. And because it's so heavily inspired by one of my favorite aircraft, the B-1 Lancer, it just gets an automatic pass from me. So this is initially where I intended the video to end. And if you couldn't tell, the original plan was actually for this to be 2 videos. I'm sure you can tell by my narration. However, as I was working on this project, it occurred to me that there are more aircraft in the movie to talk about. So I thought I would do that really quick, even though they're not all that discussed and they don't get a lot of screen time, not a lot of lore associated with them. I thought just for the sake of completion, I would just throw them in here at the end. So I guess I'll just cover them in order of the amount of screen time they get. I think that's the best way of organizing this. Starting with Marine 1, it's simply just an H3 Sea King modified for VIP transport, making it a VHD3 Sea King, further modified with alien technology with the Y27 Alien Tech engine, thus removing the need for rotor blades for vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. So up next we have a modified version of the C-17 Globemaster III called the C-17 Globemaster Devastator, and it can be seen in the background of some shots, though in one scene they mistakenly refer to it as a Hercules, unless there was meant to be a C-130 that we just don't see. That could be. And that would also be a really cool concept for them to play with. The Globemaster Devastator is almost identical in every way to her predecessor, the Globemaster III, except for the fact that they of course swapped out its typical jet engines with the Y27 Alien Tech engines and gave it twin vertical stabilizers as opposed to its predecessor's single T-tail, which may be a result of its suborbital capabilities, as giving it twin vertical stabilizers would give you extra yaw authority in thinner atmosphere. Then finally, we have two versions of the iconic Queen of the Skies. Now, I only noticed this when I was going through frame by frame, getting references for my animations and any amount of lore information I could glean from the movie. And I noticed in the background of one of these shots, actually a couple of these shots, is clearly a modified 747 made to be an AWACS. You can clearly see the rotating radar dome on top, and it has a distinctive V-tail, which is interesting, but it also has on that tail the OK tail code indicating Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma, where many AWACS aircraft are known to operate. So seemingly to me, this would make this aircraft a modified version of the E4 Doomsday made to fill the role of the E3 Century, even including its iconic radar dish. And to me, it looks like they use the YL-1 airborne laser as inspiration, at least for the livery, which would mean that this is probably a modified 747-400F variant. And finally, we have Air Force One. So Air Force One, of course, is a 747 variant, though this time being a 747-200 modified for presidential VIP transport, making it a VC-25A. And of course later modified with the obligatory Y-27 Alien Tech engines, leading me to believe it has spaceflight capabilities, which will be important in a second, the distinctive V-tail, and the unique, absolutely massive winglets at the end of the wingtips, or maybe they're vertical stabilizers. Either way, my guess is they're there for extra controllability and or stability in the thinner layers of the atmosphere if this craft really does have spaceflight capabilities like the other craft seem to. And to be honest, I really didn't even know this plane was part of the movie. I only just saw it really through concept art at first that was on the DVD menu, and then when I was going back looking through frame by frame for the other aircraft, you can see it in the corner of some shots, but it's just barely there. Well, that's literally all the lore I could find on all of these craft in this movie. I did the best I could with this. Man, this was a hard but fun project, I would say. So, as for closing thoughts, all I can say is I absolutely love the design of these aircraft, minus Marine One, because taking the rotor blades off a helicopter just seemed kind of lazy and made it look like a fish to me. And on that note, I'm actually really surprised that Project Aces didn't get the rights to the H-8 or the other aircraft to play in Ace Combat the way you can with the SR-72 Darkstar from Top Gun. Especially considering that one of the biggest aspects of Independence Day that no one really talks about is it is very much a fighter jet movie, the same way Iron Eagle and Top Gun are. And I have to say that might be one of the bigger flaws with the Independence Day sequel, is that it seemed like it was written almost as like an Ace Combat fan fiction. They really focused on the whole pilot thing way too much, like putting them to the same level and in the same spotlight and using the same language and all that you'd see in Ace Combat or like some World War I or fantasy about World War II, you know. So I think that kind of worked to its detriment. As much as I love that stuff, as much as I love aviation and all that, I think it came off just a bit too corny and a bit too cheesy. Just putting your fighter pilot characters, who are essentially just soldiers, on the same level as the Avengers, I think just, like I said, comes off a bit too cheesy, a bit too corny for your average audience. And I have to say, even for me, it seemed kind of cringy. But anyway, I got more research to do, so I gotta go stick my head back in my arse and delve into the multiverse. I'll catch y'all later. And until next time, don't forget to like, share, I guess the new thing is to hype videos now, and to drop a cold fusion bomb on that subscribe button for more lore from across the multiverse. Peace, guys. Oh, what a day. So nice to be in the air conditioning. Woo-wee. Now that that video's done, I can move on to other things. Tell you, my friend would have loved me to get that video done years ago. But anyway, speaking of new projects, our pull-up Universe ACSTR capture date 1995, maybe 1996, and check to see if we have the latest capture on file.
Directive confirmed. Accessing universe. Capture data. No need for update.
Excellent. You haven't heard from Nico today, have you?
Negative. Dr. Nico has not visited.
Okay, well, he had his chance, I guess. Back into the multiverse I go. Got a lot of research to do. Alright, ours activate alternate reality soul extractor.
Directive confirmed. Extracting soul.
Wait, Brian, before you go on the... Oh. Is he already in the multiverse?
Affirmative. Soul has been extracted and placed in parallel timeline.
Neat. Just miss him. It was important. I wanted to tell him about the radio signals we just received from Enceladus. They seem rather disconcerting. Figured he may want to know. It is his favorite moon, by the way. How long will he be away?
Next event marked on calendar is October 2nd, 2026.
You are joking, right?
Negative. That is what he is in the multiverse gathering research for at the moment.
Well, hopefully something will wake him up sooner. Okay, I guess in the meantime, got more research to do in the hangar. Guess back through the gateway. He gets to take the easy way.
Today, the land of liberty turns 250. A nation that was once free, but you didn't see the utility of the things that kept us free, like education and the lessons broadcast on TV. Giving up cultural control, you said you were too good for that role. Now the neglect has taken its toll. It feels like being shamed for building rockets instead of mining coal. You tried banning media instead of making your own. Now those who hate you sit on the throne, and all you do is moan on how media lost its tone. If you want to stay free and show your smarts, start your own slow march through the institutions of education, entertainment, and the arts. Today, the land of liberty turns 250. A nation that could be free, but you have to see the utility of the things that kept us free, like education and the lessons broadcast on TV. Taking back cultural control, we'll take on that role. We will make their cultural erosion known. We'll shame those for selling their souls. You tried banning media, now we're making our own. Now we who honor culture will sit on the throne. We'll return Western culture to its proper rhythm, cadence, and tone. If you want to stay